Oh, how's it going, everybody? Man, I am feeling under the weather these days. I don't know what it is, allergies, cold, something, but my immune system is definitely not firing on all cylinders right now. But it's a good thing because I just bought some tomatoes, some heirloom tomatoes, some awesome tomatoes, and a red bell pepper at the grocery store. Perfect for making a homemade red pepper tomato soup. And nothing makes you feel better when it's kind of cold outside and you're feeling under the weather, feeling like a pile of hot garbage, like a nice, awesome bowl of soup, plus the added benefits, the immune boosting benefits of all the vitamin C that's in both the red bell pepper and the tomatoes. So let's hop into the kitchen, do some dicing, do some slicing, do some roasting, and some blending. And that's all it's gonna take to make an amazing, delicious, easy bowl of rustic, homemade tomato soup. Come on, let's go. All right, we're getting suited up. Gonna do a little cooking today. Like to get out my apron, that way I don't get a mess all over my clothes. But feel free to rock the apron or not rock the apron, whatever works for you. And if you watched my video on homemade bolognese, the other video that I have, the first video that I posted on here, you'll remember that anything in the allium family, so onions and garlic, are gonna have the most health benefits if you chop them first and let the enzymatic reactions occur. I'm not gonna go into what the enzymatic reaction is and does, but just remember that if you chop these guys first and let them set for 5-10 minutes while you chop the rest of your veg, then you'll end up with the most bang for your buck as far as health benefits from these guys. And again, since we're talking about immune boosting functions and trying to get healthy from feeling under the weather, having a cold or whatever, then you're gonna wanna do the most that you can to get health benefits from any of the veg that we're throwing into the soup. So we're gonna start with the garlic and the onions before we get into anything else. That way these guys have enough time to work their enzymatic magic. So for the garlic, all we're gonna do with this guy today is, because we're actually gonna be roasting it whole, is we're just gonna chop the top. So you'll see in there, now we've got a bunch of cuts along all of these guys in here. So luckily that in and of itself is enough to start the enzymatic reaction. It won't be as much as if you were to fully dice it fine, but we're still gonna get a little bit more bang for our buck by chopping it that way. So we just set that guy aside and let it start working its magic. We'll get into the onion. And really, everything's gonna be tossed in the blender. So you don't need to make everything super uniform, and it's not about looking pretty or anything like this with these kinds of dices, because everything's gonna go to the blender and whiz up. So really doesn't matter. Mainly with the onion, we're trying to get, again, that enzymatic reaction to occur. So by doing a little bit of chopping on it, it's just gonna help increase the health benefits and get it going. So down the middle, and then we're just gonna peel out that outer layer, throw that into our garbage bowl. Same thing on this guy. Right. And sometimes it ends up taking that top layer because these guys are super loose, and then we'll just give it a nice rough chop. And again, we're just increasing the enzymatic reaction from occurring. So there we go. Give it a nice rough chop. Call it good. Just cut these guys in half. Boom, done. And get myself a little bowl to set these in. All right, so now our allium family, onions and garlic, are all done. So now the magic is happening with those guys, and we're gonna start chopping everything else. Again, rough chop because we're roasting everything, and then we're gonna throw everything into the blender. So don't worry about pretty or uniform on these. go. All right. And I'm actually going to, just to up the intensity of the flavor, I'm only gonna roast half of the onions. The other half I'm gonna keep raw, just to kind of add a complexity to the final product when we blend it all in there, because raw onions taste very different than cooked onions. And I like a little bit of that pungent flavor of the raw onion at the end, mixed with the sweet and kind of caramelized version of the roasted onions. So we're only gonna roast about half the onions. And now we'll just throw it in the oven, walk away, and we'll come back in a few minutes and we'll have some awesome veggies. All right, so I forgot to mention, after your, or while you're doing your chopping, start your hot box onto 425, let it start to preheat. And once you're done with all your chopping and you get everything onto the oven rack, before you put it in on the cookie sheet, just douse it in some olive oil, throw some thyme on there, throw some salt and pepper on there, and any other spices that you want to add. I just did salt and pepper and a little bit of thyme, and called it good. But as you can see here, they were doused in those. All right, the magic has happened and we are now officially done roasting. Now we have done the chopping and the roasting. Now we just got to throw it in and do the blending, and we're done. We've got soup. I wish you guys could smell this. God, it smells good in my house. I threw the thyme on there and man, my house smells ridiculous. So I'm gonna pull everything out. Got my trusty hot pad so I don't burn myself. And I'm gonna pull the veggies out of the oven, throw them up here, do a quick shot, show you what they look like now that they're nice and roasted and caramelized. And then we'll start adding into the blender and call it good. So my oven tends to smoke, so I'm going to pop it open and let it steam before I actually dive in and pull everything out. Now I gotta let my glasses defog. And be careful because there is a lot of liquid from the tomatoes. That way you don't slosh 425 degree tomato water onto your legs, because trust me, that would not feel good. All right, now let's see what we got. Just got the blender set up. Look at those steamed, beautiful, delicious veggies. Got your onions, got your jalapeno, all the different tomatoes, and then look at that beautiful garlic. God, I just want to destroy that right now, just eat the whole thing. Of course, you'll take the time, you'll pluck the sticks off, and they've served their purpose, so they are no longer viable, so you can just set those aside and throw them away. And yeah, let's start throwing everybody into the pool to start blending. All right, so the first thing we're gonna add into the blender, we've got our chicken stock. I use unsalted because I've added salt already to the veggies, and if you go with salted stocks, just me personally, I think that they're way too salty. And so I like to have a little bit more control when I'm adding the sodium content, just for the flavor, just because salted anything prepackaged is gonna be super high in sodium. So I go for the unsalted version. That's just my personal preference. Do as you wish. And I'm gonna go with 1 cup of the chicken stock. Chickeny goodness. And I'm gonna go with 1/4 cup of half and half to start, and we can always add more. And again, that's just upping the creaminess factor. And get your hot pad. And again, be careful because you do have sloshy liquid on here. And you're just gonna start moving everything into the pool here, getting those nice caramelized onions, get any of the loose tomato bits that you can. And be careful again. Get that jalapeno, get that smoky flavor. And make sure you do the garlic last, and I'll show you why here in a second. Get the red pepper. Some more of those onions. So I got all of that. And now we're going to take our garlic. We're just going to squeeze. And you'll see the cloves start to just ooze out. And you can do as much or as little as you want, depending on how garlicky you like things. I like mine a little bit more garlicky. I think that the garlic pairs really well with the jalapeno. Adds a little bit of bitterness and smokiness, especially with the caramelization done from the roasting. Right, I'm gonna call that good. And move that to the side. And then one of the secret ingredients when it comes to health benefits, I guess it'll help if I turned it right side up, is gonna be our tomato paste. And what I mean by that is a lot of veggies tend to be on the health spectrum, and the highest on their health spectrum in their fresh form. You know, going and buying something in the produce section tends to have a little bit more staying power and health benefit than going and buying the canned version or the frozen version. Tomatoes are one of the exceptions to that rule, and canned tomatoes actually have a much higher concentration of the antioxidant and precursor to vitamin A, lycopene. And it's actually, because it degrades over time, it's a very oxidizing molecule that gets oxidized as the veggie is kind of sitting there in the storage facility and then out on the shelf at the store, and then by the time you get it home, you set it down on the counter, let it, you know, have oxygen again. So through all of this, that concentration of lycopene is bleeding off, whereas you know, at their freshest peak point, when they're picked ripe, that's when that content is going to be the highest. And so if they immediately take it and steam it into the canned version, or in this case, you know, ultra concentrate it down into the tomato paste version, you're going to get a much deeper version of lycopene content as compared to the fresh tomatoes that were just roasted and added in there. They still have some in there, so it's definitely a good option, but this is just going to pack, number one, it's going to pack more of a tomato flavor, so it's just going to saturate this entire mixture with rich tomato flavor, but then it's also going to up the health content as well. So just pop this bad boy open. All right, and just give it a nice healthy squeeze. And again, this is just upping that flavor, tomato flavored, because again, we're making tomato soup, so obviously we want it to taste like tomatoes. And like I said, I did enjoy the richness of the raw onions, so we just add the last of those. And throw the lid on, and we're just gonna puree. And I will see you guys after it's done, because this is loud. But I'll show you at start. All right, so got it all blended up. It's nice and piping hot. And all you do is pour it into your bowl. And yes, it does look a little bit creamier than what you would get when you buy the Campbell's little condensed can of soup. But let me tell you, the richness, the flavor, the uniqueness, the unctuousness, it's far superior to the craziness that you'll get in a can. So check the recipe below, give it a try. And if you like it, let me know. If you don't like it, let me know too. Otherwise, thanks for tuning in, and do me a favor and keep your mind as sharp as your knives. See you next time.
It's a 16 buff in the dark.